On the morning of November 15, 2001, a hunter found the body of a young girl in the frozen woods of Minnesota. She had frozen to death. Her lifeless body was wearing a miniskirt, high-heeled boots, and a black coat. Based on her belongings, the Detroit Lakes Police was able to determine her name: Takako Konishi, age 28. She was from Tokyo, Japan, and had been to Fargo a few days earlier. A couple of days after her body was found, her story emerged. She had left Tokyo in search of the suitcase filled with $1 million that had been buried by Steve Buscemi's character in the snows of Fargo, Minnesota. For those who have not seen the film, Fargo is a dark story about a ransom gone wrong. In it, a mild-mannered car salesman has his own wife kidnapped to scam his father-in-law out of $1 million. Instead, the money wound up in the hands of kidnappers who killed each other. One of the kidnappers, Buscemi's character, buries the money alongside a fence on an unknown stretch of road before dying. According to the film, the money is never recovered. As a joke, the directors, the Coen Brothers, called their film a true story. Overnight, Takako's story became an urban legend, and her gullibility a tabloid joke. Her bizarre story was even made into a film, Kumiko, the Treasure Hunter, which dramatized the myth of her journey and death. How is it possible that she could not tell the difference between fact and fiction? What really happened to Takako? And how did she end up alone in a snowy field so far away from Fargo? In this episode, we will follow the path of the girl who died looking for the fictional suitcase containing $1 million. Takako's legend began in Bismarck, North Dakota. She was first noticed in the northeast part of the city. A truck driver saw her as she walked away from the city landfill. She then headed toward the truck stop, wearing only light clothing, a short skirt, a light black coat, and knee-high boots. Her clothes would not keep her warm in such cold day. The truck driver stopped to ask if she needed any help, but Konishi did not speak English. So he decided he would take her to the Bismarck police station. There, someone may be able to help her. Inside the police station, Officer Jesse Hellman was the first person to speak to the young woman. At first glance, the police officer took notice of how she was dressed, and wondered if she was a stripper or a prostitute. The young woman tried to explain something to him, but she did not speak English, and he did not speak Japanese. Then, she pulled a white piece of paper from her coat. It was a hand-drawn map with an X, 2 lines showing a road, and a tree. It had nothing else on it. 4 hours after she was dropped off at the police station, Jessie was still trying to communicate with the Japanese woman. Faced with a language barrier, and without a Japanese interpreter, Jessie took a chance and called 3 Chinese restaurants in town, hoping that someone there may be able to understand her. Unfortunately, no one could. Officer Steve Kilder tried to help Hellman. The only words Kilder could understand was a word the girl kept repeating time and time again. It sounded like Fargo. Kilder looked at the drawing, and realized that it was not just a regular map. It was a treasure map. Hellman had never seen the film, so Kilder told him about the suitcase buried by a tree on the side of the road. It was odd to them, but things all of a sudden began to make sense. The officers tried to tell her that there was no money, and the film was fictitious. But she did not understand them. After a lot of frustrated effort, and since she had not done anything wrong, there was not much reason to keep her at the station. Konishi wanted to go back to the truck stop, but since she also wanted to go to Fargo, Officer Hellman suggested she go to the bus station instead. Hellman, feeling sorry for Takako, offered to buy her a bus ticket and drove her to the Greyhound station so she could take the next bus to Fargo. On the ride to the station, Hellman noticed Takako was holding her stomach. He pointed to her stomach and asked if she was sick. She replied in Japanese and said something that sounded like cancer. He asked her if she had cancer, and in broken English she said, "Yes, cancer." At the station, Jesse went through the motions and handed her his card. He then watched her walk away. The next time Officer Hellman would hear about the girl would be when detectives from Detroit Lakes, on the Minnesota side, reach out to him to say that a Japanese girl had been found dead in the woods, with his card in her wallet. She checked into a Quality Inn motel 2 blocks away from the Greyhound station. A night clerk checked her into the motel. To him, the girl looked attractive, but lonely. He did not give her much thought beyond that. Takako was next seen at the motel bar. There, she struck a conversation with the owner. She showed him a map of North Dakota and asked if there was a good place to watch the stars. According to him, the young girl invited him to join her, watch a movie and have a drink after his shift. But he gracefully declined. She ended up going back to her room. Alone. From her room, Takako made a long-distance call to Singapore. The call lasted 40 minutes. The next morning, a taxi picked her up from the motel. She asked to be taken to Detroit Lakes, a summer resort town, approximately 1 hour east of Fargo. For the duration of the drive, Takako remained quiet. Upon arriving to the resort town, Takako asked to be let out on the far side of the lake. The taxi driver paused and thought about the temperature outside. Not wanting to be rude, he held back his comments, let her out of the car, and drove off. Two friends driving nearby spotted her running on the side of the road. They were under the impression that she was in a hurry to go someplace and that she was late for work. They picked her up and began to drive. They tried speaking to her but could not understand her. Then suddenly, she made them stop, and she got out. A few hours later, Debbie Kruger saw a dark figure running up a hill in the distance as she went outside to burn the garbage. Being close to Halloween, Debbie went back inside her home and told her children about the witch running on the hill. On the morning of November 15, Takako's body was found in a clearing by the forest, 60 miles away from Fargo. She was found kneeling with her face buried in the snow. Following on a lead, the coroner found no evidence of cancer. Her autopsy did find traces of alcohol, sedatives, anticonvulsants, antipsychotics and tranquilizers in her blood. These, however, were not enough to cause her death, but were probably contributing factors. Takako died of exposure, but that was very likely her intention. Weeks would pass before the police ever found out about Takako's suicide note. She had mailed it to her parents the same day she came across Jesse Hellman in Bismarck. In that letter, the young girl apologized for the shame her death and disloyalty would bring to them. Her parents received the letter 3 weeks after her death. By then, Officer Hellman had already told the press about the strange Japanese woman looking for the Fargo suitcase. 2 years after Takako became an urban legend, another version of the truth would emerge. On July 4, 2003, documentarian Paul Burchella released a short documentary titled, "This is a True Story." In it, he meticulously traced back Takako's final days. As funny, sad, or ridiculous as the media made her out to be, the reality he saw was very different. Feeling like a big part of the story was still missing, Paul Burchella traveled back to Shinjuku, a district of Tokyo, so that he could see where Takako lived. He noticed that her apartment was close to the red light district. In Tokyo, he met her landlady, who told the story of a country girl who had come to the city. She worked at a travel agency, was very polite and lived a normal happy life. One day, everything changed. The travel agency went bankrupt and Takako lost her job. To make ends meet, Takako worked as a hostess at a bar and may have even gotten into the sex industry. She had trouble finding a permanent job, so she began drinking heavily and falling behind on the rent. The boyfriend was an American she met in Tokyo. He was a banker and a married man who had taken Takako as his mistress. At some point, he ended their relationship and moved to Singapore. Takako had apparently been chasing him. He was originally from Fargo. With everything going wrong, Takako fell into depression. One day, Takako told her landlady she would go back home, and the landlady never saw her again. The girl had left everything behind and vanished. The landlady gave everything away except for the girl's boombox. A cassette was still in it. The landlady pressed play. The song was about a man who promises to take his lover back to his hometown but then leaves without her.